Okay, so we left off with the question about when was wheat harvest.
Well, we were usually harvesting during the 4th of July, and of course we'd miss fireworks unless it rained. But my grandfather had a saying that the wheat would be heading out on his birthday, which was the 13th of May, 13th of March. Now I'm confused about that. My brain's not telling me. At any rate, we'd start sometimes well before the 4th of July and sometimes barely get started on the 4th. But my brother Ronald liked fireworks, and he would order fireworks from a catalog that would arrive, and he would very faithfully not shoot them off until it was allowed to do so he wouldn't start a fire or something. But he would almost be thankful if it would rain about the 4th of July so he could shoot off his fireworks. And he'd have to be careful if there was wheat across the road or if there was any place where these rockets could land that would start a fire.
What kind of rockets did he get?
There were rockets on a stick. You'd have to set them in a pop bottle and light them and they'd go off. Not many. It was a big deal when they finally got a helicopter type, you know, one that would spin and go up in the air.
Okay.
Several different explosive type things. Cherry bombs at that time were allowed, and he would rig a pipe gun. He'd set up a series of pipes, and he'd have the big firecracker down here, and who knew what was going to be in a potato or a rock or anything. He'd shoot it off.
So you were talking about earlier about the lunches that you made for the helpers, the harvesters, yeah.
Did we talk about the cooking crew?
A little bit. You said that you helped out with the cooking crew. They
hired the lunch ladies.
The lunch ladies would fix breakfasts and suppers, and then the regular cook that was there on a regular basis would pack lunches with some help. And the one that I really remember was the summer when there was another. It was a classmate of Ronald's and I, and we had pulled the second chicken brooder house up beside the first one. We packed lunches in that one, and we packed lunches for 120 people, 120 men, and each lunch would have 4 sandwiches, which were 2 slices of bread. There'd be just a plain bread and butter. There might be a peanut butter one. There might be a lunch meat one. There might be a cheese one. But there would be 8 slices of bread for each man. Mm-hmm. And there would be a hot dish, which could be stew or fried chicken or casserole of some kind. And there would be fruit in a pint, well, we called them ice cream containers because it was just a cardboard container with a round one with a lid that fit on it. And then a cookie or a piece of cake or a piece of pie or something like that. So it was a big hearty lunch. But the men, of course, had breakfast. Most of them would be gone, headed to the field by 6 o'clock because they would have to maybe do a few repairs on the machinery, get things ready to go, and as soon as it got dry enough, they'd start working. And about 10 o'clock, one of the truck drivers would come in and see if lunch was ready. And they usually weren't ready till 10:30 or 11, but I know he was trying to get out there so they'd have a reasonable mid-morning snack, and they'd probably have a sandwich and fruit or who knows what.
So they didn't eat breakfast, they'd eat what you...
No, they ate breakfast.
Okay.
But they were through by 6 o'clock, 6 to 6:30. And then they'd take the box with all the sacks that belonged to their crew. They'd take that out to the field. And then they wouldn't get in until 9 o'clock at night. So they had to have a morning break, they had to have lunch, they had to have an afternoon break, and who knows what before they came in for a supper. So when you stop and think about it, and then they were out working hard all day. They didn't have lots of things to keep them comfortable. They had to just work in the heat.
And did you guys make the bread yourselves?
No, I can remember going to town every day for at least a case of bread. And a case would be, what, 24 loaves of probably 24 sandwiches apiece. Is that enough to come up with
400 sandwiches?
I don't know.
And was it pre-sliced at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
It was white square sandwich bread that we used.
Okay.
But as soon as I was old enough to drive, and that was one of the things I did, was go to town every day for groceries during harvest. And one summer, I remember thinking, I'm going to take a different road to town every day. So first time I went 4 miles east and 4 miles north into town. Then I went 3 miles east, 1 mile north, 1 mile east, and 3 miles north. And, you know, I kept a pattern going. I don't remember whether I ever got it completed or not. I don't think I did, because there were places where you couldn't get across, where there were people were farming across what would have been a road or a mile line there.
So, how long was the harvest? How long did it take you?
Harvest would usually take 2 weeks or longer. And then there were years when I worked in the scale house. Probably, I can remember being out with Mother when she was in the scale house or keeping track of the loads. And I think there was just a small scale at that point in time. And they actually would bring wheat in the pickup because you needed something to haul it in, and there weren't vehicles available. And then when the war was over, Uncle Lester would work the scale house. And then probably by the time I was in the 6th or 7th grade, maybe 7th grade, I started working the scale house.
So, was it difficult to juggle the farm activities and the school activities?
Usually farming activities had kind of slowed down by the time school started, so it didn't take quite as much. There wasn't the fall corn harvest because we had very little corn, very little if any corn. And I don't remember how old I was when we quit milking cows. Probably it was, probably I was in the 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade by the time we quit milking cows.
Do you know why they decided not to?
I think it was just
anymore?
Required daily attention, and good milk was available in town. And for quite a time, we picked up milk out at the experiment station. They had a good-sized dairy, and you could buy milk there.
So did you ever milk the cows?
Oh, yeah. 3-legged stools.
How young were you when you remember?
Started milking cows? Oh, I probably was no more than 7 or 8 and did a little bit of milking. And then we had a separator, which you'd put it was a centrifugal thing that would separate the cream off.
Okay. Did it do the butter too, or did you?
No, you had to churn the butter from the cream later, and we did that. And I think because those things were not available, we probably kept that up during the war pretty much until the war was over. Things were available again.
So what kinds of things, what were your favorite things about school?
I just thought school was, it was the chance I had to get to meet other kids. My nearest friend out in the country was 2 miles away until after the war. Then they moved north of the farm about 3/4 of a mile, and then we would walk back and forth. Barbara and I would walk back and forth to meet each other, play together, or ride bicycles. I can't say if there's anything particular that I liked about it. I know Mother took me to school when Ronald was in the 2nd grade. I got to go visit, and I thought that was really pretty special because then I would have started school the next year. When he was in the 3rd grade, I would have started in the 1st grade. We didn't have a kindergarten that we could go to at that time.
So what kind of other extracurricular things did you do?
Well, most everything had to be done during school because we rode the bus.
Okay.
And it wasn't until we got into high school that we had anything before or after school that took extra time. Band met during school hours, and lessons were during school hours.
You played oboe? Sorry.
I started out on the clarinet and then
Right.
7th grade, 8th grade, I can't remember which one it was. Switched to the oboe.
And what about church activities? Did you?
They were pretty structured. Sunday school and church. And then there'd be Bible school in the summertime. And then as you got into, probably not till you got to the 8th grade, did we have an MYF group. And then usually, well, it was usually my dad that would sponsor or get us there for that. And it would be Sunday evening.
Okay. So how did you first meet Grandpa Paul?
We were seniors in high school when he moved to Colby.
Mm-hmm.
His folks moved to Colby to manage the country club. And he had told them, well, I'll start school there, but if I don't like it, I'm going to go back to Hayes and live with my friend Dennis. We were in, I can't remember whether we were in more than one class together, but I remember we were in physics class together. And in those days, the juniors would sponsor a dance at the beginning of school. It was sort of a, let's get on top of this and not have any hazing of the juniors or anything going on here. So they had a dance sponsored, and I had a friend who came up and said, would you go with Paul Steele to the drive-in with my boyfriend and I, because my mother won't let me go unless we double date. And so I thought, oh, okay. So we went to the drive-in together.
Who was your friend?
Ruth Joyce Fraser.
Okay.
And I don't even remember the boy she was with at that time.
Or the movie that you saw.
No, I don't remember the movie
Was
at all.
that the drive-in movie theater here in Colby?
Yes. Well, you know where Heartland Christian School is now. That would have been the very back side of the drive-in, but there was nothing there at the time. You just drove into that big area, and the screen was against the trees to the north. And
So you went to a drive-in movie. That was your first real sort of date.
First date, blind date, I guess you'd call it, Paul.
Okay.
But you knew him because you were in
Yes, I knew who he was. I don't know whether he had paid any attention to who I was.
So how long were you dating then after a while? Or?
We didn't date any. Let's see, there was what they called the Sadie Hawkins dance, where the girls invited the boys, and one of my friends came rushing up to me in the hall one day and said, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to invite Paul to the Sadie Hawkins dance. I said, I don't care. That wasn't anything to me. So I invited somebody else, and I hadn't really thought about who I was going to invite. But then, I'm trying to remember, it was probably after Thanksgiving. He had gone to Hayes for Thanksgiving. He'd had car trouble, and he came home feeling like Hayes wasn't all he thought it was going to be. So we started dating after that.
So it was before the first half of the year was over.
Pretty much, yeah.
No. You guys were both seniors or juniors?
Seniors.
Okay, seniors in high school. Okay, and then so you graduated high school.
In 1953.
And did you go separate ways then, or did you kind of?
I had wanted to work on the oboe, and there was an oboe teacher at K-State that I was familiar with, and so I had decided I was going to go to K-State. And then that fella happened to take a sabbatical that fall, and so I told my dad, I'm going to change my mind and go to KU because that's where Paul's going. He said, no, you're not. You said you're going to K-State, you're going to K-State. So I went to K-State that first year, and he was at KU, and we drove back and forth, or he drove back. He had his car. I didn't have a car. Ronald and Peggy were going to school at K-State.
Okay.
They were married, had an apartment.
And so when did you decide to get married?
Well, I can't remember what time of the year it was, but he had come over to pick me up, and we were in Lawrence for something, and he stopped downtown, and when he came back, he had an engagement ring that he gave me. And so then we decided, well, Ronald and Peggy got married in college. We can do it too. So,
sure.
And his folks kind of agreed to pay the rent for the apartment. You know, they wouldn't have to pay dormitory or other things if they paid for an apartment. And I had enough saved to pay my $89 a semester tuition.
$89 a semester at KU. Okay.
Well, at K-State.
At
Like KU. That was probably KU.
Is that when you switched to KU?
Yeah, we switched.
Okay.
We got married the summer of '54 and switched to KU.
So you transferred to KU.
Right, right. And we had, our first apartment was upstairs. It was a little kitchenette and a bedroom, and the bathroom down the hall that was shared with a couple across the way.
Uh-huh.
And
I think it's still owned by KU. It's a house or something that's...
no, it never
it's
was.
not?
It was
Okay.
privately owned.
Okay.
When I decided I didn't want to take a whole bunch of classes that first semester after we were married. I wanted to figure out what it was like to be a wife. So I took a couple of classes, and then they had a bassoon teacher, so they did have a double reed teacher. And I worked with him a little bit and played in the orchestra, and didn't take a whole lot of classes. In the second semester I took a full load of classes. Played in a woodwind quintet. There was the number 1 woodwind quintet, which I wasn't in, and then there was the number 2, which I was in, and then another girl from Colby played flute in that. So
we kind of skipped over the wedding stuff a little bit. Did you how did you guys plan your wedding?
Let's see. I made I made the dress and Paul's suit.
Mm-hmm.
I bought the material in Manhattan and kind of got started on it down there, my dress. And then I don't know that we worried that much about planning it. It was just
Right.
just kind of went together. And we were married in the Methodist Church
In Colby?
in Colby, and we had a morning wedding. And it was a Saturday morning wedding, and after the wedding we drove as far as Salina that night. And then we went on to Lawrence to the apartment we had found. And that was pretty much started school. It was the 30th of August when we were married, and so that meant there was Labor Day weekend, and school started immediately. It didn't start in the middle of summer like it does now.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't have much of a honeymoon after?
No, not really.
So what did you study when you were at college?
I just ended up taking all sorts of things. While I was at K-State, I took a foods class, and I took some design classes, interior design type classes. One of my design plans was exhibited at the State Fair that year. I took a literature class. I took what's called Man's Physical World, which was a 6-hour, 2-semester thing where you took a smattering of geology, chemistry, physics, biology,
Sciences.
that kind of stuff, to kind of an overview of those types of things. And played in the marching band. I played tenor drum in the marching band.
Which one, K-State or KU?
K-State's.
Okay. And you played the tenor drum, so like the one that you strapped over your back at all?
Not the big bass drum.
Okay.
A tenor drum was just a big snare drum.
Okay. I think now they do field
But
drums, so they...
Instead of a stick, it was a mallet, a
Okay.
padded mallet. And so it was just rhythm. It wasn't a lot of technical riffs and flourishes
Sure.
and all that sort of stuff.
Were there a lot of women in college at that time?
Yeah, particularly at K-State because it was home ec oriented.
Right.
I don't think I didn't pay much attention to the actual ratio, and I'm sure there were a lot of departments that were a lot more female.
Right.
than male, and now you can hardly tell a difference because the fields that were considered all male, accounting and engineering, and a lot of those are pretty much law, pretty much equally divided anymore, the students. And a lot of times it's the women dominate in some of those classes.
Did you have any female professors?
Yes, I had female math teachers. I took so many varied courses that I had my undergraduate hours all figured out, but when it came to actually declaring a major and finishing up the upper class hours of my major, I was down to my senior year before I realized, oh, I got to get this figured out. And I kind of had a choice of English or math or French, and I thought, okay, conversational French is going to kill me. I can read it, and I could probably put it together, written, but conversation, I'm not exposed to enough. I won't be exposed to it enough in the future. So I kind of crossed that off. And by then we had Jerry, and I said, English is going to take a heck of a lot of reading, and I don't know that I've got time for that. So I kind of dropped the English and ended up majoring in math. So my senior year of college I took something like 18 hours of upper class math my senior year.
So how did you juggle the schoolwork and having a baby at the same time?
We did some summer school. Paul worked at the UDK press, and so they kind of liked to have him around for the summer, and he took light summer courses and then ran the press, and so that I kind of made up my hours that I didn't get from the times I took off. Took off the semester after we were married and the semester Jerry was born, and just summer school. And then between my junior and senior year, I took differential equations by correspondence. And we spent a lot of time up at the lake. Jess and Lucille Evans had a cabin up at Trenton Lake. We spent a lot of time up there working my math classes and getting that sent in. And then when we really finished, I had to go to summer school when Paul started working down in Dodge City. And then I still had, I think it was like